Hey Ronnie, so I thought that I could start actually with a video this time that gives you a sneak peek of chapter 5 so that you have an idea of what are some major things to look for before you start. So I'll provide kind of a sneak peek of what happens in this chapter, but I'll try not to spoil too much for you. So basically, this chapter is devoted to actually taking a look at what's going on in Sybil's head. So, as you would have seen in chapter 4, we learn that her quote unquote Prince Charming, that's what she calls Dorian, um, is going to propose to marry her. But if you remember, Henry hinted in chapter 4 that there is a big difference between um, a proposal to marry someone versus actually being engaged. So that's an important distinction that he makes. And it kind of points to the fact uh, that Dorian is kind of like he's moving really fast, right? He's just met this girl and he didn't really get to know her, but he's already decided that he is in love with her. And you're gonna see how, like, what kind of consequences happen as a result of this sudden affair. So in this chapter, yeah, it's devoted mostly to understanding like what's going on with Sybil, as well as what her family background is like. Her family background, as you might have guessed, just based off of the way that Dorian described it, is she definitely is of the lower class. I mean, during this time period, it would have been pretty normal for if your career is in theater, you don't really make a lot, and so she has to financially support her family as well, even though she's not even really an adult. So that's another important thing to also note is that Sybil is very young, and you will see this just in the way that she talks and the way that she describes her romance towards Dorian Gray. So, yeah, another thing that you will see in this chapter is how does her family feel about it? So, something I'd like you to take note of is how does her mother feel about it? You know, if you saw your daughter suddenly swooning over this man that you haven't even met yourself, how would you feel? And then also her brother, James, who is definitely very protective of her, and you will see how he feels as well. And he says something intense later about Dorian in regards to this concern over his sister planning to marry him. Now, something else is you will also see the very differing roles in gender in this chapter and how Oscar Wilde depicts them differently. So, Oscar Wilde, he definitely wrote his male characters in a more fleshed out way compared to his female characters, and that's something I want you to also notice. Even though Sybil is probably our main female character so far, even her character is like almost cartoonish compared to the fleshed out characters of Basil and Lord Henry, and that is something important because it kind of goes to show that um, the reflections of women of this time period, and also of Oscar Wilde's own perspective of women. So there's actually like really interesting criticisms about the way he wrote women that I also want to share with you later on after this chapter. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Finally, I guess just make sure that you also notice the differences between Sybil and her brother James. You will notice that they're kind of uh, like choices for their future, the decisions that they make about their future is very different. You might describe James's future as more ambitious and more independent, whereas with Sybil, you'll see something very different. Again, she calls Dorian her Prince Charming, and it seems like she really sees him as a ticket to freedom from the theater life. So that's pretty much it. I hope that helps, and yeah, the next video will instead be me actually annotating, showing you some annotations of chapter 5 so that you can take a look at some other significant parts of it to help you understand. All right, I'll see you in the next video.